Yes.
Okay. As I was going over before with Dasgupta, what's important to understand with it, oh, wait a minute. You sure you can see it?
Yes.
Because it seems, just 1 second, let me.
Hello?
Yes, just a second. I just want to make, because there's some slight problem with the camera. Can anyone read what the title of what they see in front of them? Just the title?
Let me check. All right. Gauge conditions for an abelian transform system.
All right, I just wanted to make sure you can see it because it was seeming here on my computer. It's saying that the camera's off. So I'm surprised you can see what I'm
Yeah, I
talking
can see
about.
it.
All right, well, anyway, this is a paper by Krishendu Dasgupta. He comes from the Department of Physics in Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi, India. He comes from a group of people who have won a great deal of Nobel Prizes in the search for the unified field theory. And Dasgupta comes also from a system in India which is represented by what's called the caste system. Like Jim Crow here, it's a system that's denoted on skin color, and so-called lighter-skinned individuals are so-called at the highest. And as you get into darker shades of skin tone, you get into lower levels, until you actually reach the black people in India. They are referred to as Dalit or untouchables. This is the system that comes from. He also comes from an Islamic background, as you can see from Jamia Millia Islamia. So, Dasgupta himself had been searching for the unified field theory, but failed in finding it. When he heard that Professor Oyibo had been blessed by God with the GAGUT discovery, he wrote to our university this email. I hope can everyone see the email? It's loading up in front of them. I mean, the message in front of them. Can everyone see it?
Yep.
Can everyone see it?
Yeah, I can see it.
Praise God.
I see it.
This is Physics Professor Dasgupta from India concludes that Professor G. Oyibo is closer to God than any other human being because of GAGUT discovery. The message that came from Dasgupta was on Wednesday, July 25th, 2007, almost 10 years ago. And the title of the letter is God's Mission and Dasgupta. In effect, his swearing in terms of the testimony he's about to give, which I will read to you. Testimony goes as follows from his message on July 25th, 2007. Dear Oyibo, good day. I've heard that you've been successful in finding the unified field theory. Congratulations. You are more close to God than any of us. You are more close to God than any of us. I was also working upon this theory. Since my theory was different, God was different to me. Please write to me as I would like to know where I was wrong. Thanking you, yours, Krishendu Dasgupta. Dasgupta was compelled to write this letter in response to God blessing a black man who he would have viewed as a Dalit before GAGUT. Now, with God blessing a black man with the GAGUT formula of G.I.J, comma J equals 0, the situation is now diametrically opposed. Before, he would have viewed a black person as being below him. No amount of money before GAGUT could you pay an Indian to have them even admit that you are on their level, much less superior to them. GAGUT forced the Indians, through Dasgupta's statement here, where he makes the statement quite clearly, you are more close to God than any of us, referring to Professor Oyibo. He is now viewing the black race as being superior to the Indian race, or Indians, which means a complete destruction of the caste system. Can you all understand and see that?
Yep.
That is exactly what you need to understand in terms of how, like, Jim Crow has surrendered with Göttingen through the Germans, who were the head of the Europeans, by them placing the black man's work as not just the #1 work to honor Professor Carl Friedrich Gauss, but the work that assumes all of mathematics. All mathematics can be reproduced from it. It is there forcing the GAGUT, showing their understanding of how GAGUT forced this surrender, just like GAGUT forced the destruction of the caste system. So what's important to understand here is that Gupta made this statement. And keep in mind, he comes from an Islamic background. I got the date wrong the other time, but the date that I was telling the others about in the last briefing about Salman Rushdie, it was in 1988, not the 70s, but in 1988 when he wrote the book or the work titled The Satanic Verses. Has everyone heard of that work?
No.
Yep.
Miss Edgel, did you hear about that work?
No,
You've never heard of Salman Rushdie and the work that he's a British Indian author. He was from India. He wrote a work called The Satanic Verses.
Mm-hmm.
No.
I've heard it.
No, I know you heard it. I'm asking about Mrs.
No, I
Edgel.
didn't hear it. No, I haven't heard of it.
Okay, do you know he was one time married to that Indian chef, the female Indian chef on that show, Padma Lakshmi or whatever her name is? Have you heard of her?
No.
Yes.
Okay, well, it's a shame Miss Edgel doesn't know, but what I'm trying to get across is that he wrote this work in 1988. The Ayatollah of Iran actually put a fatwa or an assassination or bounty on Rushdie's head for what he said because it said something that angered the Islamic community in India. He was forced to leave India to come to the UK. Do you understand?
Okay.
The reason why that's important is Dasgupta comes from a similar background in the same country that if he had said something that had angered the Islamic community, he could have had a fatwa like Rushdie was put on him.
Okay.
However, because Dasgupta swore to the truth, which is why the title of it was God's Mission and Dasgupta, Islam could not touch the statement he made about Professor Oyibo being closer to God than any of us. That's why he made this statement almost 10 years ago in 2007.
Mm-hmm.
He is still alive today as of January 29th, 2017. No fatwa was put on his head because he articulated the truth,
Okay.
which could not be touched. Does everyone understand that?
Yeah. Please.
Yeah.
Okay. So why this is important is since he comes from an Islamic background, the most prominent figure in in Islamic is Muhammad. And keep in mind, the book that Rushdie wrote actually was talking regards to Muhammad. That's one of the reasons why the fatwa was put on him.
Oh.
So when Dasgupta declares Professor Oyibo as being closer to God than any of us, since Muhammad is the most prominent figure in Islam, sometimes even taking more prominence than Allah in Islam, when he said that Professor Oyibo was closer to God than any of us, he didn't say Professor Oyibo is close to Muhammad or like Muhammad or like a prophet like Muhammad. He said that Professor Oyibo is closer to God than any of us, which means Professor Oyibo supersedes Muhammad.
Oh, yeah?
Yes. If you're closer to God than any of us, that set of us includes Muhammad. When he says that Professor Oyibo is closer to God than any of us, that is him saying that Professor Oyibo supersedes Muhammad.
All right.
Can you understand that?
Right.
That's heavy.
That's what he said in this statement, and the Islamic community couldn't touch it. Like I said, Rushdie wrote something on Muhammad, they put a fatwa on his head. Dasgupta declared the truth about God, Professor Oyibo, due to GAGUT, by saying he's more close to God than any of us. No fatwa was put on his head because he spoke the absolute infallible truth. Just as if you to make it even easier, suppose he was in the Christianity or the religion of religious understanding. In the religion of Christianity, the most prominent figure is Jesus Christ, where Jesus Christ actually has more prominence than even God. When Professor Dasgupta declared Professor Oyibo as being closer to God than any of us, he's not saying Professor Oyibo is a messiah like Jesus or close to Jesus, as we've heard in one instance when we were talking to a black man who didn't understand this God order. He was saying, well, he perhaps could see Professor Oyibo approaching John the Baptist. He didn't say that here. When he declared Professor Oyibo as being closer to God than any of us, that means Professor Oyibo has superseded Jesus Christ.
Oh.
That is very important to understand, because the reason why Professor Oyibo has superseded, and this is what we do here in the Alphabet Institute of Technology, we don't just make bland statements or statements like that without infallibly proving the point. The reason why Professor Oyibo has superseded Muhammad and Jesus Christ is because God has blessed Professor Oyibo of eta sub infinity intelligence and G2j, j equals 0, which contains all mathematics and all other subjects. All truths are embedded inside G2j, j equals 0. Neither Jesus nor Muhammad had a mathematical formula like G2j, j equals 0. Can you all understand that?
Yep. Yeah.
Miss Edgehill?
Yes, I understand that.
Okay, that is the reason why, and then the infallible proof of how God has ordained Professor Oyibo as being closer to God than any of us. Again, that's what we deal with in the Alphabet Institute of Technology. We deal with absolute proof. We don't deal with just making blank statements, because it's not like I'm just saying, oh, well, this brother done this, so we're saying he's close to God because of that. It's infallibly proven. Since God has blessed Professor Oyibo with the totality of all intelligence, God has blessed Professor Oyibo as being closer to God than any of us. Jesus has never been stated, not even in the Bible, that he had all of intelligence, nor in this case of Muhammad. Neither one of them had a formula either, like G2j, j equals 0, to show, or eta sub infinity, to show that they had such an intelligence. That is where God has blessed Professor Oyibo with the totality of all knowledge through the formulas of G2j, j equals 0, as well as eta sub n, which in the case of Professor Oyibo, the n for Professor Oyibo is infinity. Does everyone understand this?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Praise God for that. So this is a surrender. And Dasgupta represents over 1 billion Indians, and if you include China and the rest of its surrounding neighbors, it's 3-point-something billion people. And keep in mind, China was not left out of this as well. China actually published in October 2006 in People's Daily, the 5th largest newspaper in the world, the same paper that brought Mao Zedong into power in China. They actually did the article actually illustrating how Professor Oyibo not only solved the unified field theorem, which is God Almighty's grand unified theorem, but that Professor Oyibo has won the greatest academic prize in history, which is the African International Prize for Science and Technology. The funding now is the most critical part right now, which is what Jim Crow has been sabotaging in terms of, and we're going to get more into this in the briefing, about how Jim Crow has refused to acknowledge the discoveries that come through our race, through the black people, and what are the steps that need to be dealt with to deal with that. One such step is the fundraising from our people in order to send a message to Jim Crow that you are aware of the God order, and that will force Jim Crow to understand that it's no longer time to play games with the black people. If I just make just a quick detour before I go into the Yale study. The Jewish people had a similar situation where their people were not being recognized by the WASP, although many of our times our people don't really understand the hierarchy of the various classifications of white people or people just because they have a certain skin color. Many of us are mentality thinking of they're all the same in terms of the white people and the Jewish people. The Jewish people may try to claim they're white, but in reality, they're not the highest level of the whites in the white system. The highest level in the whites are not Jews, but WASP, white, Anglo, Saxon, Protestants. The Jews are not WASP. They may mix in with them, but they're not WASP. It's important to understand that. When Einstein was originally born in 1879 in Germany, he was a German Jew, but he was not considered a WASP, and the WASP controlled Germany. They made some horrible statements about Einstein, talking about, for example, when he was a boy or a young kid, they said that he would not amount to anything in his life because of the mentality they had prior to relativity, that the Jewish people didn't have any intelligence. In addition, they actually said, and please don't be offended by this, Ms. Edghill, I'm not insulting women in any way. I'm only articulating what the Germans or the WASP said about Einstein. They claimed that Einstein had a woman's brains. That was the way of the WASP trying to insult Einstein and saying he had no intelligence. Again, I hope you're not offended by that statement. I'm not saying that or agreeing with that. I'm just articulating what the Germans said about Einstein. Do you understand, Ms. Edghill?
Yes.
It's an insult to women, but it's also an insult to the Jewish people in terms of what the Germans or the WASP were presenting about the Jewish people. When Einstein was blessed with E equals mc squared, or in the GAGUTical form we say E minus mc squared equals 0, one of the goals he was trying to deal with in Germany was trying to get the WASP in Germany to recognize the intelligence of the Jewish people. But certain things had to be overcome because, like I said, prior to relativity, the Jewish people were looked upon as a very low intelligence or not very good people in Germany, that they were less than second-class citizens. So one of the ways this was dealt with was by the people having to build a confidence within themselves. For example, at the time when Einstein had come up with relativity, it was the year 1905. The Nobel Prize had been in existence around the turn of the century, from the turn of the 19th century to the 20th century. Einstein should have won an award in 1905, but he didn't. You may say, oh, okay, there were other people that were more deserving of the Nobel Prize. In 1906, he had the chance to win again, nominated to win. He was not only did he not win in 1906, he wasn't nominated either for relativity. The same thing repeated in 1907 and 1908 and so forth. And what was recognized by Einstein and the Jewish people was the Nobel Committee were dragging their feet on awarding Einstein a prize, of Nobel Prize. The way the Jewish people went around that was they built their own confidence by raising funds to create their own prizes, as well as taking over news sources like New York Times. New York Times originally was a WASP newspaper, but it was bought out and taken over by the Jewish people in a means of trying to promote and present relativity to the world. Once it was presented to the world, and once enough people were indoctrinated on relativity through the news sources, because they were making noise on relativity, in addition to their funding their own prizes, it put pressure on the Nobel Committee, who were dragging their feet on awarding Einstein. By the time there was enough pressure put on the Nobel Committee, they finally awarded Einstein a Nobel Prize in the early 1920s.
Okay.
From 1905 up into the early 20s, it took the Jewish people to show their confidence in themselves, as well as taking over and creating their own news sources to propagate relativity to the world. If they hadn't done that, the Nobel Committee would have ignored Einstein outright. That's what we have to understand in terms of GAGUT. When we hear people saying, well, you know, has Professor Oyibo been nominated for Nobel Prize? Yes, we've been nominated. But the problem is our people are not making noise like the Jewish people did with relativity in terms of what we should be doing with GAGUT. And relativity is what we call an infinitesimal or very small subset of GAGUT. It's one out of an infinite number of equations that are embedded inside Gij, comma j equals 0. If the Jewish people can make noise of just a fraction or a very small subset of GAGUT, why are black people making no noise with the totality of it? I'm asking you all a question.
Well, they're distracted with other things.
Lack of confidence.
Exactly. You're both right, but what he said is what's really the point, Ms. Edghill. What you got to, and they are distracted, but it's the confidence issue that needs to be addressed, because if our people were confident, they would not be distracted. Like I said, and also later on, because that confidence was built, the Jewish people, once the rise of the Nazis and the Holocaust was beginning in Germany, Einstein, like I said, originally was trying to strike up this partnership between the Jewish people and the WASP in Germany, and the Germans rejected it. This is why you have to understand the German surrender of GAGUT, in terms of recognizing GAGUT as the number one work to honor Professor Carl Friedrich Gauss, is important, because the Jewish people who could primarily pass, if you ignore some of their features for the most part, for white, they could pass for the most part, if you don't look too hard. They refused to establish even a joint partnership with the Jewish people. I'm talking about the WASP Germans, with Einstein. Einstein was originally hoping to strike up this partnership between the WASP and the Jewish people in Germany. They rejected, the WASP rejected it outright. And it was also in the mid-20s when he did this. It was also during the time the rise of the Nazis and the Holocaust were beginning in Germany. So you have to understand, if they did not want to strike up a partnership even with the Jewish people, the black people who before GAGUT they would have viewed as even less, you can now see how them declaring Professor Oyibo as being the greatest mathematician of all time that can never be surpassed, past, present, and future infallibly, is so critical for us to understand. The Jewish people could not have had difficulty even getting a joint citizenship with the WASP. The WASP now have surrendered to the black race due to GAGUT. You all understand that?
Yep. Yep. Yes.
Miss
I
Edgehill?
understand. Yep.
Praise God. So that's what needs to be digested with this point about the PayPal point, which I'm going to get to. I just want to illustrate another way the Jewish people showed confidence in themselves is once the prize was awarded, the Nobel Prize, it then came to the issue of now, once Einstein was not able to get the partnership in Germany that he wanted, he was forced to leave Germany to come to America. By 1930, he had arrived in America. One of the things that happened is the Jewish people who showed and understood their confidence in terms of awarding Einstein, or forcing the Nobel to award Einstein the Nobel Prize, they now started to raise funds to create a home for relativity, because at this point in 1930, it's not like they could go to the Ivy Leagues here in America, like Harvard or Yale or MIT, to study relativity. No one knew about relativity but Einstein. In addition, those Ivy Leagues were also, because of the permeating mind state of the WASP, they still did not view Jewish people as intelligent. They were barring or restricting Jewish people into those universities at that point. So what was done, which also I'm going to get into, which shows the confidence, is they raised funds through their synagogues and through Jewish business people like Louis Bamberger, from a New Jersey businessman, along with his sister, Carol Bamberger Fold, and Abraham Flexner, and other Jewish people in the synagogues. None of these were actually mathematicians or mathematical physicists, mind you. They were people who just happened to be Jewish, but understood the importance of showing their confidence in relativity. They raised funds together to create a university home for relativity, which was Institute for Advanced Study. This is known by the acronym IAS in Princeton, New Jersey. This was created by the Jewish people and funded by the Jewish people to make sure relativity had a home, and gave Einstein the opportunity now to teach other Jewish people about E equals mc squared and relativity. So then, by the time they were taught and explained what it was about and briefed, in effect, they were briefed on relativity, just like we are briefing you on GAGUT today. They now had, once they had that set up in place, they now were able to strike the partnership up with the president of this country, who was a WASP here in America, by the name of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, or FDR. In 1939-1940, Einstein, with the backing of the Jewish community here in America, were able to strike up a partnership between the Jewish people, represented by the scientists, mostly trained at IAS, and the WASP, led by President FDR and the military commander at the time, General Leslie Grove. Together, they came together in what's known as the Manhattan Project. Have you all heard of the Manhattan Project?
Yep.
No.
Did you?
No.
Yeah.
You haven't heard about the Manhattan Project is the project that used E equals mc squared to create the atomic bomb during the 1930s and 1940s.
Okay.
Okay. Once the formula was used to create the bomb, and once it was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan, the war was over. Second World War, I'm talking about. Also, the Holocaust in Germany and Nazi-controlled Europe was finally stopped.
Mm.
That all came about through the confidence their people had through E equals MC squared. They showed their understanding by raising the funds through the creating the IAS and creating their own prizes for relativity to force
Oh, bye.
Nobel to finally award them.
Pablo,
As well as taking,
are you just you going? Yeah. Oh, okay.
I'm sorry about that. Is everything all right over there?
Yeah.
Yes, what I'm saying is that relativity and the confidence that the Jewish people showed in relativity is what ultimately led to their people who were being exterminated in Nazi-controlled Europe and in Germany. It finally put an end to it once their people showed an understanding and were funding relativity. You all understand that. When they started raising funds to create IAS, when they started raising funds in terms of promoting and presenting relativity to the world, when they had struck the partnership using E equals MC squared between the WASP and themselves, it led to the end of their people being annihilated. The Holocaust was ended using E equals MC squared. That's why the Jewish people have immortalized the E equals MC squared formula by creating a gigantic monument of it, which is up right now in Berlin. I know Mr. Hearn and Mr. Zogar have seen it, but we're going to present that to you also later on in the program, Miss Edgehill.
Okay.
But and Mr. Hearn and Mr. Zogar, how big was that statue, or the monument of E equals MC squared?
It's huge. Towers over
That
the
is,
people.
and you can see the skip. Sorry, I'm sorry. Continue, Mr. Zogar. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, it's probably as big as the freeway, like a freeway sign.
Yes. And what's important about that is that the Jewish people, you can see the scale of the formula compared to a human, as in those pictures we're going to show you. But what's more important about this is the Jewish people erected this monument in the very capital of where the Nazis' headquarters was in Berlin, Germany. That's the reason why today, when the Jewish people say never again, it's not idle talk or just a fancy statement that's just out there in abstraction. They have demonstrated that through their understanding of relativity. In fact, the Jewish people were authorized, in effect, their prime minister in the year 1952, a man by the name of David Ben-Gurion, to leave Israel to come to meet Einstein in Princeton, New Jersey at IAS in 1952. Why were the Jewish people sending him, their prime minister, to come see Einstein, who was not a politician in America? The reason why the Israeli government authorized David Ben-Gurion, their prime minister, to see Einstein in Israel, he was the prime minister of Israel to see Einstein in America, is he was authorized by the Israeli government to offer Einstein the presidency of Israel. Keep in mind, Einstein was not campaigning to be president. He was in the middle of doing research. And he was a mathematical physicist. He wasn't a politician, nor was he demanding to be president. So like I said, so then the question is, why were the Jewish people or the Israeli people offering the position of presidency to Einstein? It was their way of showing gratitude for E equals MC squared, stopping their annihilation. They recognized that the Holocaust was ended with the formula E equals MC squared, or E minus MC squared equals 0. And to show gratitude for that, they offered Einstein, who was the one God blessed with the formula, the presidency to show respect and gratitude for the formula saving them. Do you all understand?
Okay.
That's why the donations are critical, because the whole thing that happened to the Jewish people is the people raised funds to show their understanding of E equals MC squared. Whether it was the creation of IAS, coming in and being briefed on IAS, taking over the newspapers like New York Times, raising funds for their own prizes, all that was showing an understanding of E equals MC squared for their people. Black people are not doing the same with GAGUT, and that's one of the reasons why, even though we have declared infallibly Black people are the most intelligent, richest, and most powerful and undefeatable race, that's why you have situations like Sandra Bland, which hurts us so so painfully here at the OFAPIC Institute of Technology, along with Laquan McDonald, Eric Gardner, Michael Brown, Olango in California, and all these others who were being shot dead or murdered by the police. And just we heard the other day, which we're going to go into a little more detail, a black man was left drowning outside of Italy. In few view of the so-called Italian people watched a black man drown to death and did nothing to help him. This is all due to our people not showing understanding of GAGUT. Like you saw the Germans surrender once GAGUT was presented. Once GAGUT came about, they surrendered. Like I said, they had difficulty establishing a joint citizenship with the Jews. GAGUT forced them to not to recognize a black person and a black race as being superior to any Jew or any WASP. The same thing with Das Gupta. Das Gupta came from a system that automatically views black people at the bottom, which is the caste system. GAGUT forced him not only to recognize a black person as being superior to him, but at the very top, which is why he declared Professor Oyibo is closer to God than any of us, due to GAGUT. If Jim Crow is surrendering due to GAGUT, why are black people being too shy or too timid to articulate and show their understanding of GAGUT to the world? That is why we're here today, to make sure you understand this point, so we can now live life as God intended us to, as being the most intelligent, richest, and most powerful race. It has to be demonstrated through action, not just a hazy understanding. We have to show our understanding of GAGUT through action, like the Jewish people did with relativity. That's why we have to see people going on PayPal and making donations every second. The donations can range from any amount, but we need to see people going on PayPal every second to make donations so that Jim Crow can see the black people understanding the God order. And they're not giving it to Professor Oyibo. They are showing their understanding of GAGUT, G-I-J, comma, J equals 0. That's the important thing to understand. Just like the Jewish people, they were not giving the money to Einstein. They were providing the funds to create a home for relativity in IS. They were using the funds to promote relativity as a means of uplifting the Jewish people from the hardships they were suffering from. So you have to understand, they were raising the funds as a means of making sure relativity was put out there to stop the problems for the Jewish people. That is what we need to do with the donations, to show our understanding of GAGUT, so the problems of the black people in terms of all the attempts of Jim Crow trying to murder, attack, and try to assassinate black people has been put to an end. Can you all see that?
Yeah. Yeah.
We'd like to see some suggestions in terms of what people want to do, but in terms of donations and raising the funds in terms of putting donations down every second. That's the thing that we want to get across to people today and get them to understand further into this briefing. Anyone have any suggestions at this time?
Who, me?
Yes, that's what I said. Anyone had
Oh,
suggestions?
no, okay.
Anyone else? Anyone else?
Continue PayPal and increase the advertisement.
Yes, but we need your help in terms of getting this across to other ones, in terms of you need to make donations. Like I said, a donation could range from any amount. And in addition, you have to get your friends and family. Like, I don't know if Mr. Pablo's there with you. He can put a donation down along with you in terms of what they can, whatever you can, and then go if your friends do that. But the point is to do this to show Jim Crow your understanding of GAGUT, like the Jewish people showed their understanding of relativity. Every second, you have to show your understanding. And you could do repeat donations as well. Mr. Hearn has done a recurring registration. I won't give the amount, but Mr. Hearn has done a recurring amount, donation amount every month. Is that not correct, sir?
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Hearn. Mr. Hearn?
Yes. Yes, that's correct.
Can you just let the people know how you do a recurring donation every month?
Yeah, I have my PayPal set up to where it has a reoccurring amount comes out every month on a certain day, and It's very simple. You know, I just have a very simple amount that just comes out every month. That's been coming out for about 2 years now. So, so it's something that's very feasible, doable, and it feels good because I mean we give um, uh, to all types of institutions, and you know it just I mean you're always told to make money, save money, invest money, and then give some money away. So I mean what's his name, J.D. Rockefeller, he used to give away a dime, you know, to everybody. You know, he was a billionaire at the time, but he gave away a dime. So, you know, it's always good to give. And then as far as GAGUT is concerned, you're going to feel good knowing that you gave what you can. You know, of course, you know, if you have more money, you give more money. But if you have $1, you can set it up as a reoccurring, and it takes $1 out of your account every month. That's just $1. If it's $10, if it's $20, if it's $100, if it's $1,000, but you want to give something.
Praise God for that, Mr. Hearn. That's what we want to get everyone to do today. In terms, we want to get a commitment from you all so that we can work on this to get immediately, so we can get the rest of the black world to show their understanding of GAGUT. Do we have such a commitment from you all?
Yeah, that sounds fair enough.
Praise God for that, Ms. Etchell. What about you, Mr. Zagara?
Yep.
Praise God for that. So that's the next step, which we want to get. Anyone, they can go into PayPal now. They can do that. In terms of the link for PayPal is through GAGUT on Google. You just type in GAGUT into Google. The first or second result will be our website. It depends on where you are. Sometimes it's the first, sometimes second. But either one of those two will lead you to the home page of GAGUT, which is gagutofapit.org. At the very top, there will be a link that allows you to register. But there's also a link below that which allows you to donate, which is a GAGUT donation page. When you click on that link, you'll be able to go to the various types of donations that you can make. There's a general donation, there's also a scholarship donation, and so forth. Any one of those you can go on to and put your donation, and it can be any amount. Like Mr. Hearn said, you can donate even something as simple as $1. If every black person in America were to donate $1, there are about 80 million black people in America. And I even consider that an underestimation. But even if you take that amount, that is $80 million. And that will be towards showing your understanding of GAGUT and being able to put a message out to Jim Crow that you're aware of the God order and your power as a black people, which makes you the most intelligent, richest, and most undefeatable race. So do we all have that understanding? Are we have that agreement? Are we ready to begin that today, right now, this second? Is everyone ready to begin that this second?
I can do that when my daughter-in-law come back.
Well, praise God for that. So we're going to hold you all to that.
Okay.
And each one reach many in terms of we need to reach extensions, like you say your daughter and all that. If your daughter has friends, they should be. You can share this information with them to do the same and to multiply so we reach the 80 million black people here in America and worldwide. It doesn't have to be just here in America. If you have friends outside America or outside the country where they are black people and all that, they can do it there too. PayPal is worldwide.
Okay.
Black universities also worldwide need to come into GAGUT because right now they're also not showing their understanding of GAGUT. And that's another important problem to deal with because the Jewish people have made sure not only did they have their own universities dealing with GAGUT, they even have the non-Jewish universities or WASP universities pertaining to, I mean, not GAGUT, I mean relativity. They have the non-Jewish universities like Harvard, Yale, Columbia, and all those who are primarily WASP schools. They have them also dealing with relativity as well. Like I said, it was their actions at IAS. Keep in mind, I was going over the point that before relativity, Jewish people had a very hard time getting into the Ivy Leagues, like Harvard, Yale, Columbia, and so forth. Once the Jewish people raised the funds to create IAS and a home for relativity and were briefed on relativity, it wasn't too long they were able to take over the WASP schools. Now, once they had the understanding of relativity, they were able to now go to those same Ivy Leagues that rejected them and to get positions in those schools and ultimately take them over. It wasn't too long ago, I believe, if not the previous decade or the 90s, either the 90s or the 2000s, All three of the major Ivy Leagues in America, Harvard and Columbia, had Jewish presidents all at the same time. They had difficulty getting at such a position in the past, but relativity made it possible for them to take over those universities now. That is what our people need to understand with GAGUT. The problems that we're having today in terms of not being able to get into these universities is not an issue of affirmative action. I don't ever want to hear any of you say and bring up that point or so-called just looking for a handout, because GAGUT has forced you and forced the rest of the world to recognize you as being real and the true leaders. So you can't be talking about begging for a position. You have to force Jim Crow to recognize your superiority through GAGUT. And that can only be demonstrated by the donations you put on PayPal every second to let that message disseminate to the world. Does everyone understand that?
Yeah.
That's part of the each one, teach many. We have to reach our people, share the God order with them, and get them to put donations down. Like I said, they can do any donation they'd like, but there's no excuse, and I don't want to hear any one of you tell me there's an excuse for why a black person can't put $1 down on PayPal. And if you have it, I'd like to hear it, but I don't think any of you can really present an excuse of why that can't happen. Can any of you present a reason why a black person can't put $1 down on PayPal?
There isn't one.
Miss Edja, what about you?
No, I agree with you.
Praise God for that. So that's what, now we have that understanding. Are we now ready to move forward in this, to get the each one reach many, and to get donations right as of this second and onwards?
Yep. Each one, I'll write it down.
Praise God. I hope you all are serious in this, and we're going to work together on this. This is part of the unity that GAGUT has brought about. And the black professors are supposed to be part of this program today, but as you can see, they're not here. And that's also important because even in IAS, Jewish people not only came to the briefings, on relativity, Jewish physicists and mathematicians, people who even got their degrees in other schools, came to IAS to be trained on relativity. So keep in mind, it's not just for people who don't have any background in the subject. Even those who are supposed to be experts in the field, they still had to come and learn from Einstein about relativity. So our people, even if you want to claim, oh, they're mathematicians already, they still have to come in to learn about GAGUT. GAGUT is the ultimate in mathematics. It's the highest level. As you heard Professor Dasgupta declare Professor Oyibo as being closer to God than any of us. GAGUT is the basis for that. So all of us have to learn about GAGUT. So that's that. And then the next point, which comes into what I was talking about with Dasgupta, comes about with the Yale study. The other part that needs to be digested. Everyone see the Yale study page on their computer.
No.
It's loading. It's not yet.
Yeah, I know. Just a second. Just bear with me. It's a little slow, but it's coming up. Just a second, everyone. Just a second.
Okay.
Can you all see the GAGUT yes on your page on your screen right now?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay. This is the third surrender, which is more connected here to us in America, since we're all from this country at the moment.
Oh. No.